This is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome tonight's speaker, Charles.
You want to put the stool? I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much. That'll be great. Hi, my name is Charles, and I'm alcoholic.
Hi, Charles.
Oh dear. This is, for me, it's going to be kind of a different sharing that I usually do. I mean, I thank David for asking me. I've learned to appreciate the opportunity, though when I was first asked in the first, in the early days, I was frightened. I came to the meeting where I was asked, and all the way I kept thinking, well, I think I'm just going to keep going and go to Las Vegas or something. I didn't plan on this part of it. I found this very difficult for many years. And then I began to enjoy it. Maybe not isn't the right way to say it, but my love of Alcoholics Anonymous is so strong and my debt is so big that I would have that energy. And I gushed with my enthusiasm and my experience. But there's a kind of phenomenon that I feel now. I mean, those who know me, those who know that I've been around a while. I took a birthday cake here 2 weeks ago for 52 years. And people tend to, thank you. See, that's the kind of the problem. I mean, I appreciate the respect and regard that you give me. And I guess, in some sense, I'm entitled to it because I haven't had a drink or any drugs or anything since 1955, March 25, 1955. But 55, is that right? Yeah. I have somehow, in this, elder statesman position that I have, feel that maybe I haven't been telling the right story. I mean, how is it that I have remained eligible for the miracle? We were talking, some of the people sharing were talking about, we don't all get back, or relapse wasn't a term we had in the old days, but, how is it that I have been so lucky? And I really feel I use the image quite often of the steer that gets pushed ahead in the stampede. It's not by virtue of any brilliant steerage. So if I'm on in years and all, it's just the accident of my having screwed up very young and had some good connections in the AA world. And so I've been around a long while. And I believe that I have behaved myself and to the best of my ability, fulfilled the suggestions and the obligations of the program. But I also feel that I have been extraordinarily lucky because I'm not an exemplary person. I haven't, I've had, you hear people say, and may I say that what I'm going to say, what I have to say, and I'm not sure what it is, I've just made an appointment with my higher power here, that it's all only my limited opinion. I wouldn't want to be held to it or for anybody else to follow in my footsteps. But it has its peculiarities, and it's occurred to me that maybe I should begin to go there with the peculiarities of my sober experience, than stay with my program, which has, my it's not a fixed pitch, but it's what usually happens, in that I just get it galloping in my drinking days and the turn in my life that Alcoholics Anonymous brought into it. So I have the impulse and the desire to exercise my authenticity. That's one of the great things about, I'm going to not be able to be heard if I sit down, but if I don't sit down, you're not going to be able to hear me either. So, I'm going to stand for a little while, but I may have to sit a bit. Let's see, I was saying that, yes, one of the great gifts or the richness of sobriety is that you do, off and on and ultimately, have the opportunity for authenticness, to be who you are, and to feel it at the time. I mean, like, one of the reasons why I might have been a little nervous tonight is that I'm going to have to think and feel and talk all at once, and to get all those things synchronized is a wonderful feeling when you think I'm speaking what I feel, and I'm informed, and all those things. They feel very good. That isn't what always happens, but I'm aiming for that. This is rather a long preamble. So what it was like, and what happened, and what I'm like now. I'm from a Depression family, flapper and chic, alcohol in our lives. My father and mother broke up. She had 4 children. She had to go to work to support us. He was gone. He was drinking. And so in one swell whoop, I lost both parents in that sense. I had a lovely grandmother and brothers and sisters, and I don't look back at those times as being terribly rough. But in subsequent inventories and what I know about psychology and have come to know about a lot of things, I did feel probably guilty of that estrangement, and I quickly hid my feelings from myself. I remember in my early, maybe not teens, but early years, I remember telling my mother, as though I had just found gold, no one is ever going to hurt my feelings. I mean, I came home with that feeling that I had discovered something marvelous, and that was to sidestep feelings. And she was an informed person who told me that wasn't exactly the best way to proceed in life, but I think I succeeded in separating myself from what I felt. So that ultimately, when I began feeling things, as I began to be sober, or even before, I was very uncomfortable. I went to alcohol very early. As an adolescent, I'd seen it, in the family, parties, and in the movies. It was glamorous, and I was drawn by everything glamorous and everything that was exciting and whatever. So alcohol came to me early, like taking the top off people's beer and getting the cherry out of their mixed drinks or whatever. I was fascinated by it. And I also was developing toward being a creative person, being an artist. Those are pretentious. This is another reason why I tend not to go into my story in this way that I'm trying tonight, because I think to claim to be an artist or anything is a kind of pretension. It's either obvious or it doesn't exist. But my values were some of them noble and some of them justifiable, but they were self-centered, and they were going kind of in a different way than my contemporaries, and I was isolated by what I wanted to do with myself in life. And it made drinking, because as you study the biographies of the creative people, you find they're generally very messed up people, and I identified with that, terrific, I mean, as a matter of fact, I said in my adolescence, I was at a party and had lots of friends there, and I said, I'm going to become an alcoholic and ruin my life. it seemed like, you might say, and I'm going to sail around the world and whatever. I mean, it just seemed like a glamorous, wonderful thing to do. That's what I knew about alcoholism. And by this time, my father had had gotten sober from the Jack Alexander article in AA. And as I would visit him down in Balboa, I would go to AA meetings and see further what alcoholism was, and that it was, in its recovery stage, marvelous. It was good-humored, it was brave, it was courageous, it was ironic, it was everything. This kid running around the meetings in Balboa, hearing people say, women with risky voices telling how they stole their kids' radio, and fathers who had run over their wife in order to go out and get booze. I just thought this AA was so terrific. I could hardly wait to get home and tell my buddies and friends on the street, like I'd been to a wonderful movie. Here was all this rich stuff. I'm very blessed in the fact that was my introduction to Alcoholics Anonymous, because I saw it wasn't the end of the road. I knew that even in the depths of my own addictions, it was not the end of the road. I saw recovery and the vividness of recovery and everything. So I'm very lucky in that sense. But and I'm going to say this, I don't often say it, but my father was new in the program, and what he wanted his family back. And so he came back into our family, and he and my mother were remarried. And he had what we have often in AA, this authority about, I got it worked out now, and you all better listen to me, in the family. And so his kids, myself, and my sister resented his reappearance in our family, and it was not necessarily a happy thing. We tolerated each other, my dad and I, at that point, but it wasn't a warm reunion. And I was really a smart ass. I mean, I would fight him and tell him off and then say, why don't you call your sponsor? Or I don't care what Bill Wilson has to say. I mean, I was a terrible adolescent, arrogant adolescent, and perhaps he didn't have all the understanding he might have had. It doesn't matter now at all, but that's a part of my story. To dovetail it into further things, my mother had remarried for a while to a mad Russian doctor. And I'd heard him say, when he took on the 4 kids, I love Jill and Carole and Bud, but Chuck remembers Charlie. He's too developed and everything like that. So I'm going to put him aside. He didn't actually say those words, but, I'm not going to try as hard. It's a lost cause. He won't accept me. I heard that, and the kid who wasn't going to let anybody wasn't going to feel anything, said to himself, "That's okay. I understand that. I wouldn't like me either. And then when my mother and father got together again, I heard my father say to my mother, the kids are still vulnerable enough to accept a parental figure, but Chuck, he's gone his own way, likes opera, likes ballet, movies, has strange friends. I give up on him." And again, I felt that was reasonable. In my early sobriety, in the early inventories I did, I was able to isolate that as what I now call the cherished wound. I was turned down by 2 principal people in my life. No wonder I messed up. No wonder in my business world, they wanted a script typist. I wanted a father. And so, or in relationships, no matter what it was, I tended to personalize and make demands on it that it wasn't going to satisfy. And so I was always hurt, annoyed. People dropped me before I wanted to be dropped. And because I needed something else, something I wasn't getting and didn't know I was missing. And so, as I say, I developed this theory. Well, it was because these 2 principal people in my life were on record as not being interested in me. But by taking inventory and over a period of time, I've been very lucky in the people that I've contacted been in contact with in the program, I somehow realized, not through any gift of mine, and I don't know exactly where our literature might have guided me this way, but that was a cherished wound. It was the thing about myself that unlocked my character and justified all my bullshit. And that I began to see, some people have had hard things and they go to write their inventory and they say, yeah, but this really happened, I was molested or I was this or I was that. It's true, but it is real. It comes down to, I think we like to think here, we do our inventory, we find our significance in it and where we might have contributed. I think it says, if we look close, and people may have wronged us, but if we look closely, we'll see at some point we have put ourselves in a position that allowed for or asked for that treatment. And in viewing that and believing that, because I do believe we are the author of our own experience, that I have been doing something in my life, both sober and before I came to the program, that makes for what bothers me, makes for what troubles me. And I realized, yes, this little kid that was in the hall and listening to my mother and father in their bedroom talk, or my mother, my stepfather, I was asking for it. It was true, they were turning me down. But in a way I was asking where I could take it on personally. I learned this from the inventories. I could accept it, and because it was within me, I could change it. Couldn't change either one of those guys and couldn't change any of that circumstance. But if I could see myself as being intricate to the unhappiness, I could change that. That's something I've learned, but I didn't know it when I first came to the program, and I didn't learn it till later. I'm getting kind of into where I want to be with this because I want to speak now of my early days. My mother and father had remarried, and he was sober, and I was drinking and drugging and enjoying it, and he wasn't, lecturing me. But one night, I never could go to sleep without knowing there was plenty booze around the house. Plenty didn't mean an awful lot compared to what some of your stories, but I didn't have enough to get to sleep, and I took some of from his bar for his social purposes. And so in the morning, knowing that I would be discovered at some point and being very clever, I said, I want to go to AA. Before I was discovered as being a culprit and having got into his booze, I was, finding the way that I would not be in trouble. And so he took me to Beverly Hills to a meeting, and I went, and I found that I liked it a lot immediately, and continued to go regularly and doing to the best of my ability everything that was suggested. There were some problems. That one of them is that, as I like to say, for those who've heard me before, everyone was over 200 years old in the meeting. I was 25, and there wasn't any other young people. To my knowledge, there wasn't anyone else with artistic pretensions. And I'm gay. At that time, I considered early in my life in AA that was a defect of character, and I was going to have, if I signed up with AA, somehow I would have to overcome that. But I didn't see any other gay people, so I was pretty isolated in the program. I came, I listened, I was stirred by your stories. The reason I'm taking this tact is that there is something that I've been hearing in the last 10 years, this great emphasis on the steps and on sponsorship. Now, that emphasis has always been there. There's no way that steps and sponsorship are not integral to sobriety. But there was something else going on then, some embrace of the newcomer, some example of other people that drew me in. I did the steps. I ultimately had a sponsor. I don't have one now. I haven't had one for a number of years. I don't know if that makes me, if I got to turn in my AA card tonight or not. But I want you to know for me, that's the facts. because you've all been so, you're generous with your applause, you respect of my years, and it seems to me I want to deal with my realities in case they're helpful to anyone else, or in case you want to adjust your opinion of me. But in any case, going to this meetings, I did, after 6 months, go out, but very briefly. It's a silly story. I won't even bother with it. It's insignificant. I thought I was doing everything right, and someone offered me a drink, and I said, no, I can't. I'm alcoholic. And they said, nonsense. And I said, yeah, you're right, nonsense. and I took the drink and found out that what you had told me, that this was a disease that continued to grow whether I was drinking or not drinking, was absolutely true. As a matter of fact, you've never told me anything that isn't true. Sometimes you had to prove it to me, and this did prove it to me. That I like to say, there's a poem by Auden that says, "The mouse we banished yesterday is an enraged rhinoceros today." I encountered the enraged rhinoceros of alcoholism after, taking a few drinks. I could not get drunk. I could not stop drinking. I was in Palm Springs, and there wasn't any local meeting to get to or anything, and I was absolutely crazed, and I was brought back to Hollywood, where we lived at the time, and I called my friends at the meetings. I said, I've gone out, and they said, well, I'll see you at a meeting. I kind of expected there was going to be a parade to the house, and they were going to embrace me and take me back, oh, you poor dear. But no, they said they'd see me at a meeting, which was the most terrific thing they did, because I was left of my own resources. If I wanted what you had, I had to get there. And even though you were 200 years old, and you didn't have any, real understanding of me, you somehow were not drinking. And I couldn't continue to drink the way at all. I mean, one of the reasons, maybe I could have, but I love my work. I love being a writer. I love my talent. I didn't feel I was a very good, what do I mean? A very good owner of my talent. I didn't take good care of it. I would set up, to write and pour my drinks and sit down and pass out. And I wasn't producing anything, and I didn't have any self-regard, and no one liked my work anyway. But while some of you may have gotten sober for your families or because the judge said so or anything, I got sober because I loved what I did. I love saving these moments of life that we have like little snapshots and somehow freezing them in time, either in movies or in books or in plays or in whatever. It's just something I like a lot. And so anyway, I quickly came back to the program, accepting totally that it doesn't have to be socially fun or anything like that, but do what they say. This is obviously much more serious than I had thought it was. And I go around in these wonderful meetings and hear people talk, and I heard a woman talk named Roz Brock. Oh gosh, I'm running out of time, but it's not a lot of time, but a little bit. But and I loved her story. It was an absolutely fabulous story. And I asked, where are you speaking next week? And she told me where, and I showed up there. And then pretty soon I was driving her to these meetings. And pretty soon, because I was there, she said, well, can my friend read the steps or something like that? And I was becoming, the way I did it, it wasn't as was suggested earlier, get a commitment in doing this, because they didn't think, and I didn't think I was going to be around tomorrow. I mean, I was a pet. Nobody, here was this kid, I don't think anybody said, well, a long life, of sobriety. I don't think anyone knew what to do with me. As a matter of fact, they would say, because I once shared about how my dog was my higher power, that if I pet him, he wagged his tail. That was the only nice thing that was happening to me in life, And so this guy at this meeting, this old man said, keep next to that dog, Sonny. And I thought, you don't get it at all. I felt like, the goat boy or something in his. I thought I had had a religious experience with this. So, there was this bottom line alienation that happens between, I guess, age groups or whatever. And so I heard this woman speak who was so terrific. I began hanging out with her. And then she had the effrontery to introduce people to me and called me the sponsee. I hadn't asked that, and I didn't really think that was a good idea. but because I wasn't arrogant, not going to do this my way. It wasn't that kind of thing. It was that children don't come to these meetings and hang around and stay. Oh, and also I had a heavy drug experience, and while nobody, as they do in more recent times, objected to that, It didn't mean anything. As a matter of fact, my sponsor suggested that I take tranquilizers. That's something. AA was dumb about drugs at that point. There wasn't the admonitions, and so I was just kind of outside, knowing you had something that I needed, and that I had to make the adjustments to fit your patterns. And so Roz and I, went to lots of meetings and would talk about the program, and she would talk to me about Ebby and Sister Ignatia, and Bill Wilson would come to the West Coast, and they'd have barbecues in the valley, and she would tell me about them and show me snapshots and things. I wasn't impressed because everybody knew those people then, and as I say, I didn't think I was ever going to have to reminisce about this because. Who knew, that I'd be around for 3 weeks more, I wish I had. I mean, I could really boast that Bill Wilson asked me, what did I think about the 11th step? Had they got it right? And, and everything. But that didn't happen. I was just peripherally. But I was very lucky because I was with people who were including me in their lives and who were spiritually advanced. During this time, this first year of my sobriety, my father, I said we had not gotten along well, but he developed cancer of the throat and was diagnosed in such a way there was nothing medicine was going to do for him. And as my mother and grandmother were Christian Scientists, he chose to take that route, which was not understood by other people in our family and by his employers. And I was able to say to him, I support the way you are, and I couldn't figure out whether it was the right thing to do or not. But I stood by my mother and him, which I think is another reason why I might be sober today. That I had challenges then, and I had the people on the program who reached out to me, daily and saw me through these dramatic things that continued to happen. And I learned very early to love the program. As I say, and there's so much more to say. I mean, I need to tell you that 5 more minutes, okay. I'm going to really breeze through this because, as I say, I'm talking about things that I don't usually talk about only because I haven't had an exemplary sobriety, but I have remained eligible, apparently, and it seems to me important that I establish my eccentricity in the case you might be able to, someone could use it. I also am obsessive compulsive, see a penny, see a thing, I have to pick it up. If the milk is not on the left side of the icebox, I'm in trouble. And when I started talking about that at meetings, so many people crowded around me after, oh, God, me too. I work the steps on it. Some days I ride the white horse, and sometimes I ride the black horse. Sometimes it's easier to give in to the squirrely feelings and not have to suffer them. And sometimes it's important to stand firm and say, I can't live this way. So here I am, sober about 7 years through this, or no, actually, in my 3rd year, suddenly my work began to catch on. Then it really began to catch on, and people, ask me again next week so I can finish this story because, now I'm in show business and people want me, and the troubles really began. I can't sign contracts. I can't let things go, and so it's all baby steps, And I was someone who was so fear-ridden, could not go below Wilshire Boulevard or to the Valley or any of those. I left out that I was agoraphobic. Now I directed a movie for Warner's with 82 people and could tell them I was going to show up. And I did. It was the happiest summer of my life. And a lot of people thought it was a marvelous movie. But because I'm an arrogant alcoholic, fearful, and everything, I didn't really screw up. Nobody would have thought I screwed up, but inside I was crazy. And so they got mad at me, and as they said, he's got us by the balls now, but when we can, we'll pull his teeth. And so they pulled my teeth for many, many years. I mean, after that experience, everything went away. I don't have all that now. I was able to maintain my sobriety through, when people that see on Academy Award night, look up and down the hall before they'll speak to you anymore because, you're a failure and they're not. All of that stuff, because Alcoholics Anonymous had by this time really filled my life up, and I knew what was important. I think I'm saying for myself to have to remember that while I don't feel so exemplary, my life experience as a sober person has been very challenging. But my love and adoration of this program and this way of life, this movement, and there's a lot written, like someone claims that Robert's Rules of Order and the principles of parliamentary law and the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous are the three most important ways of thinking in the Western world, It's a marvelous thing to belong to, and it sustained and kept me floating through a lot of distress. I can honestly tell you, I was talking to Dennis, my friend, tonight, I'm in desperate economic problems, but I do not have fear of, I have to say, if there's a higher power, and I prefer to think there is, even though I often doubt it, and if he is, he's very mischievous. If there's a higher power, things are the way they have to be. And therefore, there's some virtue to them that I don't see at this point. And I hope to stay around long enough to be illuminated. So even though things are not as good as they could be for me, and I'm going through, I'm in decline, everything, I'm not as miserable as I might be if I did not have this program. I'm so grateful for it. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share it. I wish my focus was better. I wish I could tell you what page to read when you go home tonight and whatever. I just hope that by my crazy example, you realize that the love here, the family that we are, that we have put together after the destruction of our own family and everything, that the family we put together, how valuable it is for us, and that it has longevity for you as well. Thank you very much.